if you pull in, number one, you're exempt from the criminal prosecution.
Remember that statement. It will be important later on. Thanks for coming back to question authority a bit more with part 2 of our Aquatic Invasive Species Checkpoints series. This one starts off with a comment about the effect mussels have on the salmon runs. Then we will transition into the nuts and bolts of my issues with these checkpoints as Eric breaks it down.
Because one of the things, our major spawning area of the Hanford Reach, if zebra mussels got in there, what they do is they actually completely cover the spawning grounds to the point that the salmon can't spawn anymore. And so, again, this is my concern is trying to, number one, protect the ecosystem.
I guess I think it's quite ironic that the government is now worried about salmon, as if the dams he talks about on almost every river in our region didn't change the entire ecology for salmon. We've had to go back later and install ladders for the salmon to get around the dams because of the problem. I'm sorry, I forget, that was for the benefit of utility companies waiting to start selling electricity to us generated from the dams we paid for.
We're not stopping everyone.
It says mandatory.
But we're not stopping, there's 99% of all the other traffic.
Order followers treat people who raise questions or don't just comply like idiots. They can't help it, they're trained that way. Eric is seen as a figure of authority. When civilians observe him treating us like simpletons, the message and conditioning is clear. People who question the government aren't smart. We have to really dumb things down for them. Clearly all traffic is not stopping. She was referring to all traffic with boats for all those order followers watching this who can't think for themselves.
I would love to have help from the public, because again, Corey's commented about this is what you're doing is absolutely, this is crazy. You should do it someplace else. Well, how would we do it? Because one of the things that it is this is a numbers game, just like what you said. We're looking for those needle in a haystack. It's about 1 out of every 5,000 boats that could carry. But the problem with that is the one gets through and it's over with. And so we have a limited amount of funds to do this program.
Instead of using those limited funds to forward a program that advances an agenda by our federal government and in the end is proving to be ineffective against the spread of AIS, maybe you should use them solely for what you say this program is about: education. To say he wants input from the public is disingenuous. I have been pointing out how their checkpoints are inept. What do I hear back in my communications? Arguments of how this is the way they're doing it. Apparently trying other ways is not an option. This is the option they have shoved down our throats. I'm not going to help them figure out where to put up checkpoints. Is he crazy? Did you hear what he just said? One that gets through and it's all over with. Let me say that again. If one gets through, it's all over with. So unless we are covering every entry point 24/7 and checking every threat that might possibly transport these mussels, it sounds like it's over with. That has been my point all along. If you're not going to set it up to stop all vehicles of transport all the time, your checkpoints are useless in doing what they are supposedly intended to do: prevent the spread of invasive species.
And so one of the things, there's over 41 different routes into Washington. There's thousands of lakes and thousands of boat launches.
A lot.
So I have a budget to run an operation of about $300,000 a year. And so how do I cover 41 routes?
You can't, and that's my point.
Okay, and so the thing of it is, though, this is strategically the #1 access point into Washington from our biggest threat area, which is the Great Lakes.
I guess we better hope that any boats coming from the Great Lakes come through here. Again, this is government efficiency at work here. According to the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, in 2011, the mussels were in over 600 lakes and reservoirs that were in or adjacent to 30 different states. The prevention program to prevent the spread of these mussels started well before 2011 in those states, yet they still spread to other areas. What's the lesson? You can't stop nature. You would think people supposedly studying wildlife and biology might understand that. Oh, that's right. The Department of Fish and Wildlife isn't here to protect those things. Just dole them out to the highest bidder, then sell us citizens license to maybe go enjoy nature and its animals if we get a chance.
If you look at how our check station law is written out, okay, one of the things that we are doing, we could, if you pull in, number one, you're exempt from the criminal prosecution. If you pull in, so this is one of the other things. To bring zebra aquatic mussels into the state of Washington is a gross misdemeanor.
I understand.
And not only is it a gross misdemeanor, there is a statute in there that if we can tie it back to your boat, you're responsible for the civil liability for the cleanup.
I wanted to include this so you know what the penalty is for transporting AIS into Washington state. Keep in mind, that's the crime they have to have reasonable articulable suspicion for making you pull over and submit to an inspection for. At least according to them.
Every single one of these dams on the Columbia River, and I'm not protecting them for Vista, I'm protecting them for the citizens of the state of Washington. There was a study done that it would be $25 million in maintenance per dam on the river if these things get in there. That passes down to the citizens of the state of Washington.
Call me crazy, but in part 1, Eric interrupted Republic in talking about how the intakes, pipes, and spillways get clogged with these mussels, and told her, no, I don't know who Avista is. But now he's going to tell us about a study involving all dams in this area. I know there are other utility companies in the state, but Avista serves a major portion of the population, using many of those dams he just cited. He can't keep simple stuff like that straight, yet I'm supposed to believe he's looking out for my rights regarding these AIS checkpoints? Regarding the cost of cleanup, I can't imagine it's $25 million per dam across the board. I understand this is an average, but there is a huge difference in the size and scope of dams in this region. Things are really getting into scare tactic mode now to get us to submit. You know, kind of like the Patriot Act. If you don't let us fish and wildlife folks do what we want with your property, you won't have affordable electricity. It's for your own good.
You could have got cited with a gross misdemeanor, and if we tried it back to you, you could be liable for millions of dollars. But instead, we just want to simply clean your boat, make sure that the boat's not a threat, and then we'll let you go.
More scare tactics here. It'll cost you millions if you don't stop and let us inspect. Eric said he invited our input on this. In the spirit of compromise, if to him it truly is about ecology and the wildlife of this state, just have us pull over and the technicians can inspect the boats. No questions, no tracking. I understand that information might be useful in certain ways to fight the spread of AIS. However, we give up enough of our privacy unknowingly. Enough is enough.
But when we do have an officer here, if a boat goes past, the officer's first thing is to stop them and direct them back to the station and say, please, we'd like you to go back to the station. We don't want to cite you. We just simply want to inspect the boat.
You can just take this order follower for his word here, right? I have now observed many different fish and wildlife enforcement officers at this checkpoint. Do you think they're all on the same page? Nobody will let a bad day affect them when possibly someone else is standing up for their rights? I know for a fact not everybody from Fish and Wildlife feels the same. I spoke with another captain, Dan Rond, in an unrecorded conversation. He was very adamant about enforcement by any means necessary. The propaganda is in full swing. Eric, the spokesman in charge of the program, is all nice about it, while Dan definitely has different feelings about the veracity with which to enforce this law. I certainly hope you don't run into him or any of his order-following disciples while out and about.
I saw a tugboat at 4 o'clock in the morning go right down the highway. You know, I mean...
But again, if you let me explain. Okay, I have a certain amount of money to try and
that's my point.
So one of the things that
it seems like throwing good money after bad because it's not going to solve the problem. I know that you're trying to do the best you can to be a safety net. My point is all this money is going toward a safety net that I don't see how is going to solve the problem, given the fact that you say you don't have enough money and you don't have enough manpower to staff it the way it should be.
But again, this is one of the things that we're working towards. This is a program.
More money from the citizens, another problem I have.
This order follower feels way too much authority. He interrupts the statement because he doesn't have time to listen. He only wants her to understand his view. After all, he works for the government. He's right. It doesn't matter that by the time they get the funding to do the program right, it will be too late. By then, we'll have millions of tiny mussels all over, costing us $25 million per dam to clean up, according to Eric. On top of that, we'll be getting stopped 24/7 at every port of entry into the state if you have a boat.
So look up the Fourth Amendment, and then see how it again. There's actually.
I understand the Fourth Amendment.
Look at Lister versus Illinois, 2004, and you'll find that the Supreme Court has rendered that
I have
certain
read
specialized law enforcement concerns don't need that.
Correct. I have read that.
And
actually.
Let's talk about Lister versus Illinois, not Lister versus Illinois. Like I'm going to take that order follower's word for it. He's so busy regurgitating lines, he doesn't even take the time to look up the case so he can get the names right. I'm sorry, but anyone that pronounces the S on the end of Illinois shouldn't be making six figures. This case involved a roadblock investigation. A week before the roadblock was set up, there was a traffic accident involving a car and a 70-year-old man on a bike. A week later, on the same day and time in the same intersection, police set up a roadblock to stop each passing motorist and hand out a flyer asking if anyone had information on the hit and run from the previous week. Robert Lidster avoided the roadblock and swerved to avoid the upcoming stop. He almost hit a police officer who smelled alcohol in his breath. The roadblock was eventually ruled legal because there was a primary law enforcement focus. In the past, when roadblocks were conducted for general crime control, this was ruled as violating our Fourth Amendment right. The courts allowed the Lidster conviction because the roadblock was for a primary law enforcement focus, meaning there was a crime committed and the primary focus of law enforcement was solving that specific crime. With that consensus, the roadblock was ruled not to violate Lidster's Fourth Amendment right. Here's the thing. Order follower Eric says precedent has been set already. No, actually it hasn't. The Lidster case involved a crime that had already been committed. There has been no crime in Washington to investigate every boat coming into the state. Remember, the crime is transporting aquatic invasive species into the state. We already heard Eric say the mussels aren't here yet. So if they aren't here yet, this is not a crime to investigate and ask the general public for more information to solve. That was the key to the Lidster case. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see the crime already committed that they are investigating. When this order follower says all this went through the Attorney General's office, it doesn't mean that they are saying it doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. What it means is we have found similar cases with results in our favor, and we will prosecute any tickets issued. My point is, it's not as cut and dry as Eric says. He has been given this tool by our federal government, and it makes his job easier. It would be harder to prevent the spread of AIS without these checkpoints. But this guardian of our individual rights, as he says, is using the easy way because that shiny badge gives him the authority to do so. Or at least he thinks.
I understand, and that's what I'm saying. I wish I had it on video. I did not have my car with the camera, and I saw a tugboat with out-of-state plates, and it just, so to me, it just seems. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're throwing a drop into a bucket, as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things we're also doing, we are trying to manage our dollars to get the most bang for our buck. And so right now, we are operating at those hours because from March until June,
I get the season.
We have less traffic.
Sure.
When June comes around,
sure.
Now we are going to open the station and we are going to run from 5 to 10. And so again, we are trying to stretch dollars to do the biggest safety net that we can.
Yet again with the safety net. Your safety net is still going to let something through until it's a safety wall. I'm not advocating for a wall, just making a point. Remember Eric's words? If just one gets through, it's all over. Well, guess what? Your safety net is for shit. That boat Republic was just referring to, it was from New York. I remember her telling me all about it. Why do I remember? That list of known infected waters from 2011 included the Hudson River. Where's that? Oh yeah, in New York. Better hope that's not the one Captain Order follower. I know, you'll just keep stealing our money at a very high rate like you did in 2017, and then stomp on our rights while claiming to care about the ecology of our waters for sportsmen.
Like I said, because of this, we have narrowed it down to, we're not going through people's cars.
What if I have a vessel at my home that I transport in my truck, in my camper. I'm not going to let you into my camper and pull my vessel out.
Then there's nothing we can do about it.
You're telling me you're not going to call anyone and you're not going to argue with it.
If you come in here and say,
then I guess I just still don't understand. Then I could have those mussels all over my stuff. So what's the point?
Generally, well, and again, there is, when we ask the people and we talk to them, and again, they don't have to ask the question. One of the things is we ask certain questions to address the threat. I will tell you right off the bat, zebra mussels are not a huge threat to waders. They're not a huge threat to rafts. Things get drained. The bigger threat are boats that are large boats that have been moored and these things attach. So again,
if I have my kayak inside my camper, they won't make me pull it out? There's nothing they can do about it, says Captain Eric, who's in charge of this program? I wish I was recording my call with Captain Dan Rond. Dan told me more than once, absolutely I would be required to pull my vessel from my camper or truck. I have seen on too many occasions law enforcement abusing their power to believe Eric. So far, my experience is Fish and Wildlife Police seem to think they're an extra kind of special. I sure would love just one of them to prove me wrong. Back to the boats. If you aren't going to make us get it out, what is the point of making us pull over? You already admitted that by pulling over, I'm exempt from any criminal or civil liability. Yet you won't force me to submit to a search of my threatening vessel? Eric used the word threat, referencing boats. So yes, like him, I'm applying it here for dramatic effect. It seems the boats threatening our waters are big moored boats, yet all watercraft must stop? In fact, there is a sign in the office window that reads, "If it floats, it's a boat." Are these checkpoints really about prevention or data logging and conditioning? Thanks for checking out part 2 of our AIS series. Let me know what you think with a comment. Hit the thumbs up and share this video with all your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and also check us out on Twitter for additional stories I find out there. And check out part 3 of this series by clicking on the thumbnail now. Don't forget to film the police.